Racist cop sentenced to life in prison for pointing a gun at a military general during a funeral. The barrel of the gun trembled in Officer Raymond Mercer's hand, pointed directly at the chest of the decorated four-star general who stood before him, ramrod straight in full military dress. Funeral-goers gasped. Someone screamed. The church's stained glass windows cast fractured patterns of colored light across the tense tableau, officer and general locked in a moment that would destroy both their lives. Raymond hadn't slept in 37 hours. His eyes burned, his judgment clouded by grief and rage. This moment, this terrible, irreversible choice, would be dissected for months in courtrooms and across cable news networks, labeled as yet another example of systemic racism in American policing. The headlines would be damning. White cop threatens black military leader at a funeral. But headlines rarely tell the whole story. 3 months earlier, Raymond Mercer had been a different man altogether. Spring in Hattleboro arrived reluctantly that year, winter's grip loosening in fits and starts. Raymond Mercer rolled down the window of his police cruiser, letting the cool morning air flush out the staleness of night shift. 23 years on the force, and the transition from darkness to dawn still felt like a small redemption. His police radio crackled. "All units, we have a 1054 at 1782 Lakeside Drive, possible DOA." Raymond reached for the handset. "Dispatch, this is Unit 17. I'm 2 minutes out from Lakeside, responding." "Copy that, Unit 17. Dead on arrival. Raymond hated these calls. At 52, he'd seen more than his share of them, elderly residents who passed in the night, overdoses, the occasional suicide. Hattleboro wasn't exactly a hotbed of violent crime, but death found its way here like anywhere else. The address led him to a modest ranch-style home with meticulous landscaping. A silver Buick with Veterans Affairs plates sat in the driveway. Raymond pulled in behind it, noting the bumper sticker, "Proud Army Dad." The front door opened before he reached it. A middle-aged woman stood there, eyes red-rimmed but dry. "Mrs. Carter?" Raymond asked. She nodded. "It's my father. I found him this morning when I came to take him to his doctor's appointment. I think—" her voice caught. "I think he went in his sleep." "I'm very sorry, ma'am. Mind if I come in?" The house was warm, almost stuffy. Photos lined the walls, military ceremonies, family gatherings. The largest showed a striking black man in army dress uniform, chest adorned with ribbons and medals, standing beside a smiling young woman in a graduation cap and gown. "My dad," Mrs. Carter said, following Raymond's gaze. 37 years of service, 2 tours in Vietnam, then Desert Storm. He raised me alone after my mother passed." Raymond nodded respectfully. "I appreciate his service." She led him to a bedroom at the end of the hall. The old soldier lay in bed, covers pulled neatly to his chest, looking for all the world like he might wake at any moment. But Raymond recognized the stillness of death immediately. "His name was Walter Jenkins. Everyone called him Wally." Her voice broke. "He was 79. Raymond went through the procedural necessities with practiced gentleness. No signs of trauma or disturbance. Medication bottles on the nightstand for heart condition, hypertension. The daughter had already called her father's doctor, who wasn't surprised given his patient's declining health, and agreed to sign the death certificate. As Raymond prepared to leave, Mrs. Carter touched his arm. "Officer, my father talked often about wanting a military funeral. Who should I contact to arrange that?" "I can help with that information. My father was Air Force," Raymond offered. "I still have some connections." Gratitude softened her grief-strained face. "Thank you. Dad would appreciate that." Raymond drove back to the station, thinking about Walter Jenkins. Another veteran gone. His own father, gone 7 years now, would have been about the same age. The memory of his father's funeral, the crisp salute of honor guards, the precise folding of the flag, still carried a sting. 3 days later, Raymond pulled into the parking lot of Milligan's Diner for his customary post-shift breakfast. The place was busy with the usual morning crowd, retirees lingering over coffee, workers grabbing quick meals before heading to construction sites or offices. "Morning, Ray," called Ellie, the 60-something waitress who'd been serving him breakfast for nearly 2 decades. "The usual." "Please," Raymond settled into his corner booth, stretching his legs under the table. A young man slid into the booth across from him uninvited. Tall, lean, with closely cropped hair and intense eyes. He wore a plain black t-shirt that revealed muscular arms covered with intricate tattoos. "Officer Mercer," the young man said, not a question. Raymond's hand instinctively moved closer to his holstered weapon. "That's right, and you are." "Isaiah Jenkins. Walter Jenkins was my grandfather." Raymond relaxed slightly. "Ah, I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Jenkins. I met your mother the other day." Isaiah nodded, his expression unreadable. "She mentioned you, said you were helpful." He leaned forward. "I wanted to thank you personally and ask a favor." "What kind of favor?" "My grandfather's funeral is next Saturday. Military honors, the whole thing. My uncle, my grandfather's son, is flying in from Germany. He's a general in the army, stationed at Ramstein Air Base." Raymond raised his eyebrows, impressed. "A general." "4 stars, Lieutenant General Marcus Jenkins. Kind of the family success story," Isaiah said with a complicated mix of pride and something else Raymond couldn't quite identify. "Anyway, the favor. We're expecting a large turnout. My grandfather was respected in the community. I was hoping you might help with traffic control around the church, maybe escort the procession to the cemetery." Raymond nodded. "That can certainly be arranged. I can talk to the department about assigning officers." "I'd like you to be there," Isaiah said firmly. "Personally." The request seemed odd but not unreasonable. "I'll see what I can do. If I'm not on shift, I'd be happy to help." Isaiah nodded, apparently satisfied. He pulled out a business card and placed it on the table. "My number, in case you need to reach me." He stood. "My grandfather respected law enforcement, said you all had one of the hardest jobs, standing between order and chaos." "Sounds like a wise man." "He was." Isaiah's tone hardened almost imperceptibly. "He believed in justice, too, above all else." With that cryptic comment, he walked away. Ellie arrived with Raymond's breakfast. "Making friends with the Jenkins boy?" she asked. "You know him?" "Known Isaiah since he was knee-high to a grasshopper, smart as a whip, full scholarship to Stanford, then came back here instead of taking some fancy job out west. Said Hattleboro needed him more." She sighed. "Shame about old Wally, fine man, looked out for Isaiah after his daddy went to prison." Raymond paused mid-bite. "Prison. Oh, ancient history now. Isaiah's father, Wally's younger son, got mixed up in something bad back in the 90s. Drugs, I think, went away for a long time. Isaiah was just a little thing." Raymond finished his breakfast thoughtfully. The Jenkins family was obviously more complicated than the picture-perfect military legacy suggested. But then, most families were. Later that afternoon, Raymond submitted the formal request to assist with Walter Jenkins' funeral. His sergeant approved without question, even authorizing overtime if necessary. "Community relations," he said. "Important the department shows respect for our veterans." In the days leading up to the funeral, Raymond found himself thinking often about Walter Jenkins and his family. He'd run a routine background check on Isaiah Jenkins, a harmless professional precaution, he told himself. The young man had a clean record, not even a parking ticket. Bachelor's and master's from Stanford in political science and African American studies. Currently working as a community organizer and director of a youth outreach program in Hattleboro's predominantly Black East Side. Raymond had driven through that neighborhood countless times on patrol, but realized he knew very little about the community outreach happening there. His interactions were mostly limited to responding to calls, domestic disturbances, occasional drug activity, teenage mischief. He'd always prided himself on treating everyone the same, regardless of skin color. He wasn't one of those cops who saw threats around every corner. At least, that's what he'd always told himself. Friday evening, the night before the funeral, Raymond received an unexpected call from a blocked number. "Officer Mercer," the voice was deep, authoritative. "Yes, who's this?" "Lieutenant General Marcus Jenkins. I understand you'll be assisting with my father's funeral tomorrow." Raymond straightened instinctively, as if standing at attention. "Yes, sir. I'll be helping with traffic control and the procession." "My nephew Isaiah speaks highly of you, says you treated the family with respect." "Just doing my job, sir." "Nevertheless, I appreciate it. My father respected those who served their communities, as do I. There was a pause. There's something you should know, Officer Mercer. My father left explicit instructions about his funeral. Some family members have concerns about certain aspects. Raymond frowned. Concerns. Nothing that should affect your duties. Just be aware that emotions may run high. Family dynamics can be complicated, especially in times of grief. Understood, sir. Good. I look forward to meeting you tomorrow, Officer Mercer. The line went dead, leaving Raymond puzzled. What kind of funeral instructions could cause family tension? And why would a four-star general feel the need to warn a local police officer about it? Sleep didn't come easily that night. Raymond tossed and turned, his mind circling around the Jenkins family. His own family had never been particularly complicated, just him and his parents, then just him after they passed. No siblings, no extended family drama. His marriage had ended 15 years ago, quickly and quietly, before children could complicate matters. Sometimes he wondered if his life had been too simple, too uncluttered by the messy human connections that seemed to give other lives meaning. Morning arrived with a gentle spring rain that tapered off before dawn, leaving the world washed clean and fragrant. Raymond dressed with particular care in his Class A uniform, reserved for ceremonies and formal occasions. He polished his badge until it gleamed. First Baptist Church of Hattleboro stood near the town center, its white steeple piercing the blue sky. By the time Raymond arrived, cars already lined the surrounding streets. He coordinated with 3 other officers assigned to traffic duty, then positioned himself near the church entrance. A sleek black limousine pulled up. The chauffeur opened the door, and out stepped a man who could only be Lieutenant General Marcus Jenkins. Tall and imposing in his dress uniform, chest heavy with medals and ribbons, face solemn but composed. A striking woman in a conservative black dress followed, his wife, presumably. Raymond found himself standing straighter as the general approached. "Officer Mercer?" the general asked. "Yes, sir. Raymond Mercer, Hattleboro PD." The general offered his hand. His grip was firm, his gaze direct. "Marcus Jenkins, thank you for your assistance today." "My honor, sir." The general lowered his voice. "Has Isaiah arrived yet?" "Not that I've seen, sir." A flicker of concern crossed the general's face. "Let me know when he does, would you?" "Of course, sir." General Jenkins and his wife entered the church. More attendees arrived, military personnel in dress uniforms, elderly veterans, community members. Mrs. Carter, Walter's daughter, arrived with a group of relatives. She recognized Raymond and nodded appreciatively. Just as the service was about to begin, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up. Isaiah Jenkins emerged, wearing an impeccably tailored black suit. He wasn't alone. A middle-aged man exited the passenger side, tall like the Jenkins men, but thinner, his face bearing the weathered look of someone who'd lived a hard life. He walked with a slight limp and kept his eyes downcast. Raymond's police instincts tingled. Something about the man seemed off, nervous perhaps, or out of place. Isaiah guided him by the elbow, protective and watchful. As they passed, Isaiah nodded to Raymond. "Officer Mercer." "Mr. Jenkins?" Raymond's eyes shifted to the other man. Isaiah noticed. "My father, Elijah Jenkins. Dad, this is Officer Mercer. He's helping with the funeral today." Elijah Jenkins raised his eyes briefly to meet Raymond's. "Officer!" His voice was a raspy whisper, nothing like his brother's commanding baritone. Raymond nodded respectfully. "Sir, I'm sorry for your loss." Elijah's lips twitched in what might have been an attempt at a smile. He looked away quickly, letting Isaiah guide him into the church. The service began, the church filled to capacity. Raymond remained outside, monitoring the street, occasionally glancing through the open doors. The minister spoke eloquently about Walter Jenkins' life of service, to his country, his community, his family. A military chaplain offered prayers. The general delivered a powerful eulogy, his voice occasionally catching with emotion as he spoke of his father's strength, integrity, and wisdom. Then something unexpected happened. Isaiah stepped to the pulpit, supporting his father Elijah. The older man trembled visibly, clutching a piece of paper. "My father," Isaiah announced to the congregation, "has a letter from my grandfather he wishes to read." A murmur rippled through the church. Raymond noticed General Jenkins stiffen in his front row seat. His wife placed a restraining hand on his arm. Elijah Jenkins unfolded the paper with shaking hands. His voice, weak at first, gained strength as he read. To my family and friends gathered today, if you're hearing these words, then I have gone to meet my Maker. Before I do, there are truths that must be spoken. 32 years ago, my younger son Elijah made a terrible mistake. He pled guilty to drug trafficking and went to prison. What none of you know, what I have kept secret all these years, is that he was innocent. The congregation stirred. General Jenkins half rose from his seat before his wife pulled him back down. Elijah protected someone else, someone who could not afford to have his future destroyed. Someone who has gone on to serve his country with distinction. My elder son, Marcus. The church erupted in shocked whispers. The general sat rigidly, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. It was Marcus who brought the drugs into our home, Elijah continued reading. Marcus who was selling to pay for college. When the police investigation began, Elijah took the blame. He sacrificed his freedom so his brother could pursue his dreams of military service. For 32 years, I have honored their pact of silence, but I cannot take this injustice to my grave. Raymond watched, transfixed, as the family drama unfolded. The general remained seated, though every muscle in his body seemed coiled to spring. His wife whispered urgently in his ear. I failed both my sons, Elijah read, his voice breaking. I failed Marcus by allowing him to escape the consequences of his actions, setting him on a path of denial and self-deception. I failed Elijah by permitting his sacrifice to go unacknowledged, allowing him to waste his life to preserve our family's reputation. Today, I ask both my sons for forgiveness, and I ask all of you to witness this truth so that perhaps this family can finally heal. Elijah folded the letter, tears streaming down his face. Isaiah helped him back to his seat, arm protectively around his father's shoulders. For several seconds, the church remained in stunned silence. Then General Jenkins stood. His face had transformed from anger to a cold, controlled fury. This is preposterous, he said, his commanding voice filling the sanctuary. My father suffered from dementia in his final years. This fabrication is the product of a failing mind. I will not allow his legacy to be tarnished by these delusions. He turned to glare at his brother. And I will not allow an ex-convict drug dealer to slander my name and reputation at our father's funeral. Elijah Jenkins seemed to shrink under his brother's gaze, but Isaiah stepped forward, placing himself between his father and uncle. These aren't delusions, Uncle Marcus. Grandpa was lucid until the end. He documented everything, kept journals, gathered evidence. He wanted the truth to come out after he was gone. Evidence? The general laughed harshly. What possible evidence could exist after 3 decades? Isaiah's expression hardened. The testimony of the arresting officer, for one. The man who knew Dad took the fall for you but couldn't prove it. The man who kept his own records all these years, waiting for justice. He's here today. Isaiah turned and pointed to an elderly man sitting quietly in the back row. Detective James Wilson, retired now, but his memory is just fine. The congregation turned as one to look at the former detective, who stood slowly, leaning on a cane. It's true, he said simply. I always knew but couldn't prove it. Your father contacted me last year, Lieutenant General, said it was time to set things right. The general's composure cracked, his face flushed dark with rage. This is absurd, a conspiracy to destroy me. I won't stand for it. His wife tugged at his arm. Marcus, please, not here, not now. But the general shook her off. He strode down the aisle toward his brother and nephew, fury radiating from him like heat. You ungrateful, envious. Raymond, watching from the doorway, tensed. The situation was escalating dangerously. He stepped into the church, hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. The general reached his brother, looming over the smaller man. Take it back, he demanded. Tell them all you made it up. Elijah Jenkins, who had spent 32 years in his brother's shadow, and most of those years in prison, finally found his voice. No, Marcus, I've done everything you ever asked of me. I gave you my life. I won't give you my truth as well. The general's control snapped. He grabbed his brother by the lapels of his suit jacket, lifting him partially off the ground. Take it back. Several people moved at once. The general's wife cried out. Isaiah lunged toward his uncle, and Raymond Mercer drew his weapon. "Let him go, now!" Raymond's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The general froze, still gripping his brother, and turned his head to see the police officer aiming a gun directly at him. "I said let him go," Raymond repeated, advancing slowly. The general released his brother, who staggered backward into Isaiah's steadying arms. Then the general turned fully to face Raymond, his expression shifting from rage to imperious disbelief. "You're pointing a weapon at me, officer. Do you know who I am?" "Step back, sir," Raymond ordered, gun still raised. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The general's wife hurried to his side. "Marcus, please do as he says." But the general seemed beyond reason. "I will not be threatened by some small-town cop. Lower your weapon immediately. That's an order." "I don't take orders from you, sir," Raymond replied evenly. "Now please step back and calm down before this gets worse." "Worse?" The general's laugh was bitter. "Officer, your career ended the moment you drew that weapon. One call from me to your superiors and—" "Marcus," his wife's voice cracked like a whip. "Stop this now." Raymond kept his gun trained on the general, acutely aware of the hundreds of witnesses watching this confrontation. Many had their phones out, recording. In his peripheral vision, he could see his fellow officers moving through the crowd toward him. "Final warning, sir," Raymond said. "Step back and keep your hands visible, or I will be forced to detain you." For one terrible moment, Raymond thought the general might lunge at him. Then slowly the fight seemed to drain from the military man. His shoulders sagged. He raised his hands slightly. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Another officer reached Raymond's side. "Everything okay here, Mercer?" Raymond nodded, not taking his eyes off the general. "Just a situation that got out of hand. I think we're good now." He holstered his weapon carefully. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come outside with me so we can discuss what just happened." The general allowed himself to be led from the church, his wife following close behind. Outside, away from the crowd, Raymond attempted to defuse the situation. "Sir, I understand this is an emotional day for your family, but I can't allow physical altercations, especially in a church during a funeral service." The general had regained his composure, his face once again an impassive mask. "You pulled your weapon on a 4-star general of the United States Army, Officer Mercer. That was a serious error in judgment." "With all due respect, sir, you were assaulting a civilian. I responded according to my training." "Assaulting," the general scoffed. "A family disagreement, nothing more." His wife touched his arm. "Marcus, please, let's just go back inside and finish the service for your father." The general ignored her. "I want your badge number and the name of your supervising officer," he told Raymond. Raymond provided the information without hesitation. "Sir, I'd advise you to return to the service and pay your respects to your father. We can address any complaints through proper channels afterward." The general's eyes narrowed. "Oh, we will, Officer Mercer, I promise you that." He turned and strode back into the church, his wife hurrying after him. Raymond exhaled slowly, suddenly aware of how tense his body had become. Drawing his weapon had been instinctive, a reaction to a potential threat. But even as he'd done it, a voice in the back of his mind had whispered a warning. This won't end well. The remainder of the funeral passed without incident. The general maintained a rigid dignity throughout, not looking at his brother or nephew again. After the burial service at the cemetery, the family dispersed to their vehicles. Raymond noticed Isaiah supporting his father, guiding him gently to their SUV. As they passed, Isaiah paused. "Officer Mercer, thank you for what you did in there." Raymond shifted uncomfortably. "Just doing my job, Mr. Jenkins." "You prevented something worse from happening." Isaiah glanced at his father, who seemed dazed and exhausted. "My uncle, he's not used to being challenged or exposed." "Family situations can be complicated," Raymond offered neutrally. Isaiah's expression darkened. "This goes beyond family drama, officer. My uncle built his entire life and career on my father's sacrifice. Now that the truth is out, he'll do anything to discredit it, and anyone who witnessed it." He lowered his voice. "Watch yourself. Marcus Jenkins has powerful friends." Before Raymond could respond, Isaiah guided his father to their waiting vehicle and departed. By Monday morning, the video had gone viral. Raymond arrived at the station to find his sergeant waiting for him, face grim. "My office, now." The sergeant closed the door behind them and pointed to his computer screen, where a news website displayed the headline: "White police officer draws weapon on Black Army general during father's funeral." The accompanying video, shot by someone in the congregation, showed Raymond aiming his gun at General Jenkins without the preceding context of the general's aggression toward his brother. "Care to explain this, Mercer?" the sergeant asked. Raymond did, laying out the full sequence of events and the threat he'd perceived when the general grabbed his brother. The sergeant listened, then sighed heavily. "General Jenkins has filed a formal complaint alleging racial bias and excessive force. Claims you targeted him without provocation in a church, of all places." "That's not what happened, Sarge. There are dozens of witnesses who saw the whole thing. And there are thousands of people online who have seen this video clip, which makes it look like you pulled a gun on a decorated black military officer for no reason. In the current climate?" The sergeant shook his head. "What about Elijah Jenkins or Isaiah? They saw everything." "Haven't heard from them. Look, Mercer, I'm placing you on administrative leave pending investigation. Standard procedure. Turn in your badge and gun." Raymond stared at him in disbelief. "You can't be serious. 23 years on the force, clean record, and you're taking his word over mine." "Not taking anyone's word, following procedure. This is a mess, Ray. The mayor's already called twice. The press is calling. Social media is blowing up. We need to do this by the book." Numbly, Raymond surrendered his service weapon and badge. As he left the station, reporters converged on him, shouting questions. "Officer Mercer, do you regret drawing your weapon on General Jenkins? Was race a factor in your decision to use force against a black military officer? Have you had previous complaints of racial bias filed against you?" Raymond pushed through them without comment, got into his personal vehicle and drove home, hands shaking on the steering wheel. His phone rang constantly, colleagues, friends, even his ex-wife. He ignored them all, sitting in stunned silence in his living room as the story exploded across national news platforms. By evening, pundits were debating his actions on cable news, most condemning him without knowing the full context. Just after midnight, his doorbell rang. Raymond checked through the peephole to see Isaiah Jenkins standing on his porch. He hesitated, then opened the door. "Officer Mercer," Isaiah said, "may I come in?" Raymond stepped aside. "It's just Mercer now. They took my badge today." Isaiah's expression tightened. "I heard, that's why I'm here." In Raymond's living room, Isaiah declined the offer of a drink. "My father wants to make a statement, tell what really happened, but he's terrified of Marcus, always has been." "And you?" "I'm not afraid of my uncle," Isaiah said firmly. "But I'm realistic about his power and influence. He's already working to discredit Grandpa's letter, claiming dementia, trying to suppress the evidence." "What evidence?" Isaiah produced a flash drive. "Everything. Grandpa's journals detailing how Marcus got involved with drugs in college, the original police reports, letters between my father and grandfather while Dad was in prison, and this." He pulled out a yellowed envelope. "A confession Marcus wrote before he left for West Point, thanking my father for taking the fall. Grandpa kept it all these years as insurance." Raymond stared at the items. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to understand what you're up against. Marcus will destroy you to protect himself. He's already spinning this as a racially motivated attack, playing the victim while erasing my father's real victimhood." Isaiah's voice hardened. 32 years my father spent in prison. 32 years of his life gone because his brother was too cowardly to face the consequences of his actions." Raymond sank into a chair. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" "Fight back, tell the truth. Don't let them make you the villain in this story." Isaiah placed the flash drive and envelope on the coffee table. "These are copies. Use them if you need to." After Isaiah left, Raymond examined the contents of the flash drive and read the confession letter. General Marcus Jenkins' handwriting had matured, but the signature was unmistakably similar to his current one. In flowing youthful script, he had thanked his brother for the greatest sacrifice anyone could make, promised to make it worth it by becoming someone extraordinary, and sworn that, Someday, when it's safe, the world will know what you did for me. Raymond sat awake until dawn, weighing his options. His career was likely over regardless. The department would sacrifice him to avoid controversy, but he could still fight for his reputation, his integrity. He called an attorney first thing in the morning. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal consultations, interviews with internal affairs, and avoiding reporters camped outside his home. The case became a national flashpoint, with Raymond cast as either a racist cop drunk on power or a dedicated officer who'd acted reasonably in a volatile situation, depending on one's media bubble. General Jenkins leveraged his considerable influence, appearing on news programs to denounce Raymond's actions and dismiss his father's letter as the ramblings of a confused old man. He categorically denied the drug allegations, attributing them to his brother's long-standing resentment and substance abuse issues. Isaiah and Elijah Jenkins remained conspicuously silent, despite Raymond's attorney's attempts to contact them for statements. A month into the investigation, Raymond received an unexpected visit from Detective James Wilson, the retired officer who had been present at Walter Jenkins' funeral. "I've been trying to speak with Internal Affairs," the elderly detective said, settling carefully onto Raymond's couch. "They keep rescheduling. Thought I'd come to you directly." "I appreciate that, sir." Wilson nodded. "This whole thing stinks. I was there that day, saw everything. The general was about to assault his brother, maybe worse. You did your job." "Not everyone sees it that way." "Politics," Wilson spat, "always comes down to who has the power." He fixed Raymond with a steady gaze. "I arrested Elijah Jenkins back in '91, found a kilo of cocaine in the Jenkins family home. Elijah confessed immediately, wouldn't implicate anyone else, but I knew he was covering for his brother." "How?" "The drugs were hidden in Marcus's room, and a confidential informant had identified Marcus as the dealer, not Elijah. But when I tried to pursue that angle, I hit walls. The Jenkins family had connections. Marcus was headed to West Point with a recommendation from a congressman. Suddenly my captain was telling me to wrap up the case, accept Elijah's confession, move on." Raymond leaned forward. "Did you document any of this?" Wilson smiled thinly. "I've been a cop long enough to know when to keep alternate records, made copies of everything, kept my own notes. Walter Jenkins contacted me about a year ago, said he was dying, wanted to make things right. We compared notes." He paused. "I gave statements to 3 different news outlets last week. None of them has run the story." "General Jenkins has a lot of influence." "That he does, but the truth has a way of coming out eventually." Wilson struggled to his feet. "Don't give up, son. You did the right thing that day. Some of us still care about that." After the detective left, Raymond felt a renewed sense of purpose. He might lose his career, but he wouldn't lose his integrity. He began preparing a statement for the press, with his attorney's guidance, outlining exactly what had happened at the funeral and why he had drawn his weapon. The night before he was scheduled to give his statement, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Mercer," he answered. "Mr. Mercer." The general's voice was instantly recognizable. "I think it's time we spoke directly." Raymond's pulse quickened. "I don't think my attorney would advise that, sir." "This isn't a legal discussion. It's a personal one, man to man." "About what?" "About how to resolve this unfortunate situation in a way that serves everyone's interests." Raymond's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm listening." "I'm prepared to withdraw my complaint. Issue a statement clarifying that your actions, while overzealous, were not racially motivated. With my support, you could be reinstated with minimal damage to your career." "In exchange for what?" The general's laugh was cold. "You're direct. I appreciate that. In exchange for your public statement that my father's letter was indeed the product of confusion and declining health, that you've seen no credible evidence supporting the allegations against me, and that you regret the disruption to my father's funeral." Raymond closed his eyes, a way back to his job, his life. All it would cost was the truth. "And what about your brother? The 32 years he spent in prison for your crime?" A long pause. "My brother made his choices, Mr. Mercer, as we all do." "Like the choice you made to let him take the fall." The general's voice hardened. "Don't presume to judge me. You have no idea the pressures I was under, the potential I would have wasted. My service to this country has saved countless lives. Would that have happened if I'd gone to prison instead? Maybe your brother had potential too. This is my final offer, Mr. Mercer. Take it or face the consequences. I have resources you cannot imagine. The power to make sure you never work in law enforcement again. The influence to shape how history remembers this incident, and you. Raymond thought about Isaiah Jenkins and his father. About Walter Jenkins, who had tried to right a decades-old wrong from his deathbed. About Detective Wilson, still fighting for justice after all these years. No deal, General. I'll take my chances with the truth. The general was silent for a moment. Then you're a fool, Mercer, and you'll lose everything. Maybe, but I'll still be able to look at myself in the mirror. Raymond ended the call. He slept surprisingly well that night, better than he had since the funeral. In the morning, he dressed carefully for his press conference, choosing a suit rather than his uniform. He was speaking as Raymond Mercer now, not Officer Mercer. His attorney met him at his home. Ready for this? Raymond nodded, more than ready. They drove to the small conference room his attorney had rented, away from the police station. A modest gathering of reporters waited, local news mostly, with a few national outlets. Nothing like the media circus surrounding General Jenkins' appearances. Raymond approached the podium, notes in hand. Camera shutters clicked. He looked out at the assembled journalists, took a deep breath, and began. My name is Raymond Mercer. Until recently, I was an officer with the Hattleboro Police Department, where I served faithfully for 23 years. I'm here today to tell the truth about what happened at Walter Jenkins' funeral and why I drew my weapon on Lieutenant General Marcus Jenkins. He recounted the events precisely, from his first meeting with Mrs. Carter through the confrontation in the church. I acted to prevent what I believed was an imminent assault. Race played no role in my decision. I would have responded the same way regardless of who was involved. In my 23 years as an officer, I have never had a complaint of racial bias filed against me. He paused, then continued. Since that day, my character and career have been attacked by a powerful man desperate to protect his reputation. Last night, General Jenkins offered to help reinstate me if I would publicly discredit Walter Jenkins' letter and the evidence supporting it. I refused. The reporters stirred, suddenly more attentive. I have copies of that evidence, which I'm making available to all of you today. It includes General Jenkins' own written confession from 32 years ago, thanking his brother for taking the blame for his crime. It includes Walter Jenkins' detailed journals documenting the truth he kept hidden for decades. And it includes the original investigating detectives' suppressed reports identifying Marcus, not Elijah, as the actual drug dealer. Raymond's attorney began distributing packets to the reporters. I don't know if this evidence will save my career, but this isn't just about me anymore. It's about a man who spent 32 years in prison for his brother's crime. It's about a father who tried to right that wrong before he died. And it's about whether we allow the powerful to rewrite history to serve their purposes. Questions erupted as he finished. Raymond answered them calmly, directly, without embellishment or accusation. When asked what he hoped would come from his statement, he replied simply, justice. For Elijah Jenkins, for Walter Jenkins, and for the truth. As the press conference ended, his attorney touched his arm. Someone here to see you. Raymond turned to find Elijah Jenkins standing quietly at the back of the room, supported by his son Isaiah. Mr. Jenkins, Raymond said, surprised, I didn't expect to see you here. Elijah's weathered face bore a tentative smile. I had to come to thank you for standing up for the truth and to tell you I'm ready to do the same. Isaiah nodded. We're holding our own press conference tomorrow. Dad's going to tell his story, all of it. Are you sure? Raymond asked Elijah. Your brother is a powerful man. I've been afraid of my brother my entire life, Elijah said quietly. I gave him my youth, my future. I won't give him my voice too, not anymore. Raymond felt something shift inside him, a sense that whatever happened to his career, he had done the right thing. He had stood for truth when it would have been easier to compromise. Would you join us tomorrow? Isaiah asked. Stand with my father when he speaks. Raymond looked from son to father, seeing the same quiet dignity in both faces. It would be an honor. In the end, Raymond Mercer didn't get his badge back. The department, eager to avoid prolonged controversy, offered him early retirement with partial benefits, a face-saving compromise for all involved. He accepted, recognizing that his effectiveness as an officer had been irreparably damaged. General Marcus Jenkins was never prosecuted for the long-ago drug offense. The statute of limitations had expired decades earlier. But his carefully constructed image crumbled as the evidence became public. He retired from the Army 6 months later, citing family obligations, though rumors of forced resignation persisted. Elijah Jenkins, with his son's support, began speaking to community groups and at-risk youth about his experiences in the justice system. His quiet dignity and refusal to express bitterness toward his brother or the system that failed him made his story all the more powerful. Raymond found himself at loose ends for a time, unsure how to define himself after 23 years in uniform. Then one evening, Isaiah Jenkins appeared at his door again. "My youth outreach program needs someone to teach conflict resolution and community relations," Isaiah said without preamble. "Someone who understands both law enforcement and justice. Interested?" Raymond hesitated. "You sure I'm the right person after everything that happened?" Isaiah smiled. "Because of everything that happened, you stood up for truth when it cost you something. That's exactly what these kids need to see." A year later, Raymond sat in the audience at Hattleboro City Hall, watching as Mayor Alina Thompson presented Elijah Jenkins with the key to the city. "For your courage in speaking truth to power," the mayor said, "and for your work with returning citizens trying to rebuild their lives after incarceration." Elijah, still frail but standing straighter these days, accepted the honor with characteristic humility. "I share this with my father, who tried to make things right before he died, with my son, who never stopped believing in me, and with Raymond Mercer, who risked everything to protect me and the truth." He sought Raymond's eyes in the audience. "Sometimes justice comes at a high price, but as my father always said, anything worth having is worth sacrificing for." Raymond nodded, feeling an unexpected peace settle over him. His career in law enforcement was over, but he had found a new purpose helping Isaiah's community programs bridge the gap between police and citizens. The irony wasn't lost on him. It had taken losing his badge to truly understand the community he'd sworn to protect and serve. As the ceremony ended, Raymond spotted a familiar face in the crowd, Detective James Wilson, now well into his 80s but still straight-backed and keen-eyed. "Never thought I'd see the day," the old detective said, watching Elijah receive congratulations from city officials. "Justice delayed is usually justice denied, but sometimes," he shook his head in wonder. "Sometimes the truth finds a way," Raymond finished for him. Wilson clapped him on the shoulder. "You paid a high price for it, son." Raymond watched Isaiah join his father on the stage, their resemblance striking in profile, the same determination, the same integrity that Walter Jenkins had possessed. "Worth every penny," he said. The gavel fell with a sharp crack, silencing the courtroom. Judge Alina Simmons, known for her no-nonsense approach and impeccable fairness, peered over her reading glasses at the defendant. "Will the defendant please rise for sentencing?" Raymond Mercer stood beside his attorney, face impassive. 3 years had passed since Walter Jenkins' funeral. 2 years since Raymond had begun working with Isaiah's community programs. 1 year since the federal investigation had uncovered a conspiracy to falsify evidence and testimony against him. The revelation that General Marcus Jenkins had leveraged military and political connections to pressure the Hattleboro Police Department and manufacture evidence of racial bias had shocked the nation. More shocking still was the discovery that the general had conspired with certain officials to ensure Raymond's professional destruction. As the case against the general built, Raymond had been subpoenaed repeatedly to testify before grand juries and congressional committees investigating abuse of power and corruption. He had done so reluctantly, taking no pleasure in the general's downfall. Now, in a twist that still sometimes felt unreal to Raymond, he stood accused of attempting to extort the general. a charge manufactured from doctored recordings and falsified emails that had temporarily convinced investigators before forensic analysis proved they were fabricated. Raymond Mercer, Judge Simmons began, you have been found not guilty on all charges. The evidence presented by the prosecution has been thoroughly discredited, and this court formally recognizes that you have been the victim of an elaborate conspiracy to obstruct justice and pervert the course of this investigation. Relief washed through Raymond. Though he had known the evidence against him was false, the machinery of justice moved with agonizing slowness, and there had been moments of doubt. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court wishes to formally apologize for the ordeal you have endured. The transcript of these proceedings, including this court's recognition of your innocence, will be entered into the permanent record. She removed her glasses, her expression softening slightly. Mr. Mercer, you have demonstrated remarkable courage and integrity throughout this process. It is individuals like you who strengthen our faith in the justice system, even as others attempt to corrupt it. Thank you, Your Honor, Raymond said quietly. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Raymond's attorney handled most questions, allowing Raymond to stand silently beside him, still processing the official acknowledgement of his innocence. A familiar voice called his name. Raymond turned to see Elijah and Isaiah Jenkins approaching. Elijah, looking healthier than Raymond had ever seen him, embraced him warmly. Congratulations, Elijah said, though it's a shame you needed to be congratulated for simply having the truth recognized. How does it feel? Isaiah asked. Raymond considered the question. Validating, but hollow in a way. I never wanted any of this. Not the attention, not the legal battles, certainly not the destruction of your uncle's career and reputation. Elijah nodded understanding. Marcus destroyed himself. His choices, from that first brick of cocaine to his campaign to discredit you, were his own. Have you spoken with him? Raymond asked. Once, before his sentencing, he wanted my forgiveness. Elijah's eyes grew distant. I told him I forgave him decades ago. That was never the issue. The issue was truth and healing and justice. And did he understand that? Elijah smiled sadly. I don't think Marcus has ever understood anything that doesn't center himself. That's been his tragedy all along. They walked together away from the courthouse, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows before them. What now? Isaiah asked. You could probably get your badge back if you wanted, or sue the department for damages. Raymond shook his head. No, that chapter's closed. I'm happy with the work we're doing together, making actual change, building bridges, he smiled. Though I might take a vacation first. Been a while since I've had time to just breathe. They paused at the corner where they would part ways, Elijah and Isaiah to their community center, Raymond to his apartment. You know, Elijah said thoughtfully, my father would have liked how this all turned out. Not the pain or the struggle, but the truth finally having its day. That's all he ever wanted. Truth has a cost, Raymond observed. Yes, Isaiah agreed. But as Grandpa used to say, the cost of living with lies is always higher in the end. As Raymond watched father and son walk away, he reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. A routine death notification, a funeral, a split-second decision to draw his weapon, seemingly small moments that had changed the course of multiple lives. He had lost his career but found a new purpose. He had faced false accusations but emerged with his integrity intact. And perhaps most importantly, he had helped a family begin to heal from decades of buried truth and silent injustice. Sometimes, Raymond thought, justice arrives in unexpected ways through unexpected people at unexpected times, but it arrives nonetheless. And that, in the end, was enough.